Today's video is brought to us by the generosity of Firearms Legal Protection. Firearms Legal Protection is a legal defense program for lawful gun owners. You win the fight, and they will help you win the fight after the fight for the rest of your life. There's a link in the description for a coupon code for a discount for all active self-protection watchers. So today's video fascinates me, okay? So Mark and I have talked about this much, but you're getting to have the discussion while we have the discussion and I get educated here. A huge topic about there are unjust laws in this world and unjust laws in our society. And sometimes you get charged with crimes for laws that are just plain wrong. But we have this concept, it's not in statutory law, but in common law that we call jury nullification. I'm fascinated by this, so it's something that I don't think judges and district attorneys like at all.
No, they don't like it at all. But it's something our founding fathers liked very much, and they talked about it. They were very aware of it. Let's talk about what it is, first of all.
Please.
Generally what happens is a jury, what they get to judge in a trial, and this is sort of American law right now, what they're judging are the facts. Mm-hmm. We know what the law is. They get to decide what the facts are. And usually there are disputes about the facts, and they get to weigh credibility, and they make decisions about facts, and then the judge gives them the law. And that's sort of the trend today. The judge instructs you on the law. In fact, in order to get on the jury, generally there's an oath that you have to take where you swear to follow the law as the judge has given it to you, whether you like the law or not. Okay? And so that deals with sort of the piece of the puzzle that you were just mentioning. Some people say, no, I don't agree with, say, the drug war or things like, or prostitution or gambling or any of these other crazy victimless crimes. And so that person gets kicked off the jury. So there really are two reasons why someone on the jury may want to engage in jury nullification. One is the reason that you point out, which is, I just don't think this is a just law, and I'm not convicting anyone. I don't care what the facts are. The other is, I think that this is a just law, but for this particular situation, it just doesn't fit. For this particular situation, we're going to give you a pass on it. Now, this is a power that the jury still has. They just don't get to be told about this power. If the jury comes back and says, you know, we thought about it and we've decided to go with not guilty, that's pretty much the end of the analysis.
Right.
You don't get to sort of pry into the mental processes of the jurors and say, what did you guys think about? What did you talk about? Why did you do this or that? It's got to be something sort of blatant. Somebody was paying off a juror. They were doing research that they weren't supposed to do, something like that. But other than those types of things, jury verdicts generally stand for the way they are, and that's it. So the reason why I like jury nullification, and if we look at both of these separate reasons, we can talk about them separately. First, I agree with you entirely. I think that not all our laws are good laws. This is my personal opinion, but I think that, take for example the drug war. I would say in a free country, like we're supposed to be, competent adults ought to be in charge of what they put in their bodies. If they go out and hurt someone else or they put someone else at risk, that's a different question.
Yep.
But if they're just putting something in their body and they're a competent adult, to me, that's their business. To punish them for that, to me, is an unjust law. And so someone who would be utilizing jury nullification, who's on a jury, might say exactly that. If they were allowed to be told that they can nullify the law, they may say, I just don't agree with this law, and that's the end of that. The other circumstance is more for around the edges. I would say it sort of acknowledges that life is complex. It's very difficult, and I would say even impossible, that we can come up with any rule that fits every possible situation.
Sure.
We just don't have a rule that does that. Like, for example, it's sort of an outlandish example, but even if you can take something like murder. We say murder is always wrong. The intentional killing of another human being, that's not self-defense, right? Self-defense is a different story.
Sure.
But you could say that seems like a pretty solid rule. But we could even come up with some hypothetical situations that maybe we wouldn't even want to hold such a person to that standard, even in a real murder, right? You could imagine a situation, and this is sort of maybe an outlandish situation, but imagine bad guy makes big bomb, and the only way to stop the bomb from exploding in the crowded downtown area is to sort of shoot it and destroy the bomb. But a bad guy then decides to strap innocent people as a human shield to protect his bomb. and you got no time and you got to make a decision. This is the age-old question. Do I intentionally kill 1 or 2 or 3 to maybe save hundreds of thousands? And so if somebody then shot through the victim saying, please don't shoot me, to disable the bomb and protect 100,000
Yeah,
people.
greater harm.
It's a murder, right? It's not a self-defense.
No?
It's a murder case. But if I was on the jury and that was the situation, I recognize it as a murder. I would say, you know what, the prosecutor has proven every element of the murder charge. The guy intended to kill this person. They were just strapped to the bomb. He indeed pulled the trigger, and that's what killed the person, and it wasn't self-defense. And they have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that a murder occurred, but I'm not going to convict that guy under those very particular, very unique, very outlandish sort of facts. But there might be other facts in other cases where people on a jury might want to judge the applicability and the legitimacy of the law as it applies to this particular circumstance. And the reason that the Founding Fathers like this, and the reason I like it, is because the jury is supposed to be the final check.
Yeah.
Not just the final check on government, but also on the law. They're supposed to be the final check. Does this law make sense as applied to these particular facts, even if it's a good law? And so I rather like the idea of giving the jury that power. Now, to be fair about it, there's another side of the argument here. Jury nullification has historically been used for bad reasons, right? So imagine, laws down south that say, no, you don't get to assault a black guy just because he's black.
Yeah.
And now you get a racist white jury, and they say, we're not going to convict our racist white friend for beating up the black guy, even though he did, because we don't like that law. So this is always the give and take and the balance. But, I think you can't legislate a virtuous society.
You can't.
Either we got one or we don't. And in a virtuous society, jury nullification doesn't bother me, because I just don't think that we've got large numbers of people who think in horrible racist terms like that.
Yeah, and I think that that's an honest thing to worry about, because it has happened. We've seen it happen, and we don't want that to happen, of course. But I'd like to think of most people as being better than that. And
most are. To be fair, I mean, not everybody, but most are better than that. And I think we could probably effectively weed those types of people out on a jury.
So I guess to me, I don't know what you think of this. When I thought about this as I was kind of looking through it, I said, well, wait a minute. At the very beginning, he doesn't have complete discretion, but a police officer has some discretion in the application of the law.
Right.
He gets to decide, yeah, that was a breaking of the law, but I'm going to let you off the hook on that. I'm not going to write you the ticket.
Pretty close to complete discretion there. They can say, hey, we're going to give you a break. I'm not going to submit this.
Cop's going to say, I'm not going to hook you up for that or whatever. And that's a good thing. We want them to have that discretion.
And so does the prosecutor.
And then the prosecutor has discretion, because the prosecutor can then look at the officer chose to arrest, but we're going to choose not to charge you with that.
Right.
And so there's great discretion there, even if we do know this was against the law, but look, given everything else, we're going to let you pass.
We've had laws on the books in this state until, I say fairly recently, maybe 10, 15 years or so, that cohabitation was a crime.
Wow.
Living with somebody in an unmarried state was a criminal offense. Having gay sex was a crime. Until fairly recently, our Supreme Court spoke on that, and people could be charged and taken to jail. Now,
did they?
People didn't, because we all knew that this stuff was kind of stupid, and cops didn't arrest people for it, and prosecutors didn't prosecute people for it. But look, in the event that they did, it would be nice to have the jury to say, look, we don't buy this. This is stupid. We're not convicting somebody.
I need some more knowledge here, though, because I've heard that as a juror in the jury deliberation room, if you discuss jury nullification, that will lead to a mistrial.
Assuming it comes out, yeah, because the current state of affairs right now is not only do we not tell the jurors about jury nullification, we specifically advise them and get them to take an oath that they won't do that. So if somebody is doing that back in the jury room and this comes up, this could easily be seen as jury misconduct.
So then how does it work then if a jury were to do that?
Well, this is why it's better to actually change the law than to talk about how do we get around it in a sneaky kind of a way. Well, and I'm not in favor of that. I think we should do our best to get the laws straight, and then we should enforce them properly. So, I like the idea in today's world of take for example possession of marijuana.
Yeah.
In this state right now, if you don't have a medical marijuana card and you got one marijuana cigarette, a joint, you're looking at 2 felony charges.
Wow.
I would love to stand in front of a jury and say, ladies and gentlemen, yes, maybe they did prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Of course, my guy admitted it's his. He said he had it. He was smoking it. They tested it. It's weed, blah, blah, blah. But who cares? Let him off. This is a stupid crime.
Yeah.
I'd love to argue that. And if I can convince a jury of 8 or 12 people to let someone off just because they think the law is wrong, I think that ought to serve as a final check on a government that's out of control.
Well, and let's think about this even on an innocence side. So I can give you a personal thing on this. I have somebody in my home who has a medical marijuana card. And of course, I don't, and I'm not a user, right? But what had happened if so for instance, my wife, who is a caretaker for somebody with a medical marijuana card, were to go buy some medical marijuana legally and then lose her mind and leave it in my car. And now I drive to this place. I didn't know it was in my car. I had nothing to do with it. I don't touch it. I'm not a card holder. And then I get pulled over and, oh, dude, you've got marijuana.
Well, in that circumstance, you're actually, on those facts, not guilty of the crime. Because possession of an item is more than just having it near you or even having it in your pocket. So just to sort of play this out, right? If we were to, after we get done filming this, if I was to take some small amount of marijuana and without your knowledge, drop it into your back pocket, and then later on, a police officer finds it in your pants pocket. Now, whether they believe you is a different question.
These aren't even my pants.
Right, right. But the truth of the matter is, if you were not aware of the fact that I slipped it in your pocket, although you had custody of it, you didn't have possession of it. The same in reverse, sort of think about your toothbrush.
Right.
Back at your house, in the bathroom, sitting wherever it's sitting. It's not on you right now, but you are certainly in possession of a toothbrush because there's a mental aspect to being in possession of something. So if you think about it, there's custody, there's possession, and then there's ownership. Normally, the prohibition is on possession, right?
So I agree with you then if we get back to the jury nullification that we say, okay, I'd rather have the law be fixed.
Let's get the law straight.
Let's get the law straightened out. And that means we need to talk to our legislators because the legislators are who make the laws and fix this.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that, by the way. I know. And I've had people say, John, you should run for state office. And I say, don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. I got no way. But so in the interim, though, if I were to get called for a jury, and let's just say I have a friend who was recently just got picked for a 2.5-week criminal case. He's sitting it right now as we're filming, in fact. And if I were to believe that, wait a minute, let's say it's a case like we were talking about, and you could see any number of issues where you go, this is a stupid law. Why is this even a law? Why are we prosecuting somebody and harassing a private citizen for something like this where no one was harmed and no wrong was done? So instead of playing games, I just go, I'm sorry, I'm just voting not guilty.
Well, before you get there, you're going to get questioned by the judge. The judge is going to ask you, look, does anybody have any problems following the law exactly as I give it to you? Raise your hand if you got any issue with that. So if you raise your hand and you say, look, I think this law is stupid, I'm not going to ever hold somebody guilty, which is what you're required to do in that
Which is being honest.
Then you're off. The judge isn't going to give you any grief. You're entitled to your position. The judge is just going to say, see ya. We don't want somebody on the jury who refuses to impose the law because they don't agree with the law.
So if I believe in jury nullification, I'm never going to get picked for a jury right now.
Well, not quite. You can believe in jury nullification, but say, I still agree to follow the law in this particular case. You got to say, I'm not willing to follow the law in this particular case.
Because, of course, I wouldn't want to raise my hand and then lie about it because now I've perjured myself.
You can get in trouble, yeah. So you got to be very careful. To be clear, we are not advising people to lie when they're getting picked for a jury. If they do that, then they're putting themselves at risk of a criminal prosecution. What I am advocating for is that we change the law.
Yeah, change the law. But I guess I could see, though, somebody saying, yeah, I'm willing to follow the law, but then in the course of events, coming to a personal conscientious problem with it, with saying, wait, I said I could do this, but really in my soul, this is unjust given the circumstances.
Yeah, this comes up a lot today in the death penalty context, right? Because when you pick a a jury on a death penalty case, we call it death qualifying the jurors. What we do is we ask, because people have strong feelings about the death penalty, for or against, whatever. We ask, is there anybody here, who feels like for whatever personal reasons they just could never vote for the death penalty, just as a matter of conscience or morality or something like that? Somebody raises their hands and they're off the jury. And you can sort of understand why, right? Because if our society has opted for that as a penalty, and you're supposed to be sitting as the member of the jury to determine whether or not the government has proven the sufficient aggravating circumstances to require the death penalty, and you're sitting here saying, I don't care what they show, I'm never going for the death penalty. Well, you can understand the reason, right? I mean, the reason for the argument on the other side is, look, we don't want people individually judging the law. That's the job of the legislature, to make the law. My response back to that is, no matter how good we make the law, even you and I, we're both libertarians, right?
Yeah.
We like something called the non-aggression principle.
We do.
And we should do a video on that sometime.
We should.
But there are even times, like that I just pointed out, where you would violate the non-aggression, where even the non-aggression principle isn't the right rule in these sort of extreme circumstances. So, in the world that I see, say we get the rules all, we would say, consistent with the non-aggression principle. That would be getting the rules straight.
Yeah.
You might still have a need for jury nullification.
You might.
Because someone might say, look, in this circumstance, even though he violated the non-aggression principle, we still want to let him off.
Wow. I think this is fascinating stuff, because if you know that going in and you say, I'm willing to impose the law, but then later you can't, I think the right answer here is we got to talk to our legislators and return that power to the jury. I am worried, though, about the history where, for instance, with the racist stuff that you talk about, I'm not going to convict a white guy who kills a black man because he's black.
But I think there are ways we could screen that out, right? If that was ever a concern in a case, right? Let's say we got a guy and he's a black guy and he was beat up, and we got those types of concerns, we could try to screen these people off the jury. I think I so would hate to believe that we've got a big percentage of people in today's America who feel that way. I mean, I don't want to give short shrift and say we don't have anybody like that. Of course we still have people like that. But I think we're moving on a train in a different direction these days. I think most people are open-minded enough to recognize that the color of somebody's skin is just not an important thing anymore.
Yeah. Well, I'll put some links in the description with some more reading and some more research for you to do on how that works out. Of course, I believe that serving on a jury is a public service and a public good, and you shouldn't try to get out of jury service. You should actually, the people that are watching this channel, I actually want serving on juries. And so, Mark, thank you for the information.
Thanks for having me.